Here we see an older transmission. This is the Ford C6, 3-speed hydraulic converter automatic transmission. It was introduced in the early 1960s and continued to be used all the way up through the 1980s. This particular unit is from a late 70s pickup truck. This transmission is more than 35 years old. Now, it's actually been rebuilt 3 times. The last time it was rebuilt, I did it, and that was 30 years ago. Well, the truck that it's going in is going through a frame-off restoration, and the owner of the transmission actually owns an automotive shop, and he wants to make sure it's done right. Here's his old pump, and we reused this last time, and we can see that there's considerable wear there in the gear pocket of the pump. And here we see the outer driven gear. Here we see the inner driving gear. Now, it hasn't been making contact with the crescent, but it sure has been digging in, and as we can see, I got a considerable clearance. And as I look at the stator support, this is a critical point. There's some wear, but it's not extreme. But what we elected to do is to go ahead and go with a remanufactured pump. And as you can see, here, this housing is perfectly smooth. And here we see the outer and the inner gear. You want to pay attention to the orientation of that gear as far as the converter is concerned. There, it's just about flush. And as we take a look, they actually remachined this face. So, very good shape. Now, one thing you do need to note when you're actually working on this style is whether or not you have a drain back valve or not. And the drain back valve is evidenced by that spring and check ball. And what happens here is that as I am moving fluid through the torque converter, the fluid on its way out to the transmission cooler has to compress the spring and unseat the check ball, and off she goes. Well, what happens when I shut the vehicle off? The spring pushes the check ball against the seat and keeps the converter from draining back. Now, it can drain back, but it has to do so like, through the hub and the bushing. But as long as I have a fresh bushing and a good tight clearance, there shouldn't be a problem. Some of the very early 1960s units did not have that feature. I notice here that in my remanufactured stator support, they included new bushings. And of course, obviously, I got a new converter hub bushing and a new front seal. Ready to go another 300,000 miles.